Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you might be. Hopefully, everyone's having a great time. It is now day 4 or 5 of Global Hack Week, so it's almost been a full week. So hopefully, you all have been to a few of the other streams, were able to check out some of the other things that were going on, and are having a great time. I do want to remind everyone to please check into the event before we get started. And again, just to warm up, I like to do something and ask, where is everyone tuning in from today? I know it is a Monday where I'm at. It's like 5 p.m. right now. So where is everybody else tuning in from? What time is it for you? We've had some people tuning in from some crazy places. So I think it's always exciting to see where everyone is joining in from and see really how global of an audience we have. I can go first. I'm actually based out of Texas, so it is, yeah, 5 p.m. for me after the time zone change and everything. 6 p.m. All right, 6 p.m. and then Eastern. That is awesome. Cali, 3 p.m. Joining it early or afternoon. Okay, I love that. Very US based audience right now. That's good. Okay, that's great. So it's good to see people from all over the US at least, if not all over the world. So that is amazing. Um, All right, hopefully everyone's excited to get started building a cloud native CI/CD pipeline. So quick introduction to sort of what we're going to be doing. This is a very, very beginner focused workshop. So we are going to be doing everything from scratch. And again, I've walked through this process before. There are a lot of places where you might fall into getting some sort of an error. So please do not hesitate to reach out, just put something in the chat, be like, hey, I'm getting this issue when doing this specific thing, and I'll do my best to help you out. If it's something that's more complicated, then I can always help you out after the stream ends on Discord. All right. So We're basically just here to learn sort of the fundamentals of building a CI/CD pipeline. It's going to be a cloud native pipeline because this is Global Hack Week Cloud. And the tools that we're going to be using today are Jenkins and GitHub. And again, we're going to be, if we do have enough time, we'll be deploying that as well. So we're going to be using a GitHub repo today that contains a sample personal website. So sample code for a personal website. So really quickly, just a very high level introduction to what CI/CD is, right? CI/CD basically means continuous integration and continuous deployment. Excuse me. Um, so continuous integration basically just automates code testing and code building phases. So instead of you having to do something like every like midnight maybe, you'd run a cron job that essentially tests all new any new code that's been pushed to a repo. Instead of that, this just keeps on doing the testing as soon as maybe some code is pushed to the repository, instead of it being like a nightly build or a once a week build or something of that sort. And then for continuous deployment, that's really just automating the release process. So again, that's really, if we are going to have enough time, we'll also work on the deployment aspect of it and actually try and deploy our website to a website, right? So now in the chat, now that you sort of understand what CI/CD is, right? Can someone tell me why it might be important? Why might CI/CD be important? So the stream today will be 2 hours long. So we are almost 10 minutes in. So it's it's going very fast. Yale guy said automating mitigates human error. That's absolutely correct, right? Maybe you end up building the incorrect version on some night. So having an automated process does definitely mitigate human error. And yes, repetitive tasks being automated does really make it a lot easier to get sort of code out faster. Yeah, it really just does reduce manual effort. And then one really important thing is it also speeds up sort of development cycles, right? Normally, what would happen before any CI/CD pipelines existed was that people would have nightly jobs running, right? Cron jobs running that are like, okay, every night we're going to run this job that builds this code and does these specific things. So usually it might just be like running tests through the new code that's been pushed, and those were fine, right? But you don't get immediate feedback regarding any errors in your code. So if you're done coding and you push all your changes at, let's say, you start your job at 9 a.m., you're done pushing all your changes by like noon, then you're really just sitting around doing absolutely nothing for the next 5 hours. So it's a great way of also speeding up the development process as well. Okay, so that is what we're going to be working on at a very high level. So I do want to um, point out a few the GitHub repo that we will be using, as well as some other things or important things that um, to keep in mind. So first of all, we're going to be using a GitHub repo. This is like an older GitHub repo that I have had, but if everyone can fork this repo right here on GitHub, that's GHW-deploy2, you can just fork that, and that should be able to get you the GHW deploy step that we're going to be working with. So again, if you wanted to see what the actual website looks like, you can open up the link and that'll just show you a quick sample website. Let me share my screen. It might be fun for everyone to see what's going on. Window. Okay, there we go. So this is the code right here. This is the basically what we're using and what we're going to be doing our CI/CD pipe or building our CI/CD pipeline for. And this right here, if you click on this link, this will just show you example code of what, what this basically is. So again, you can obviously change this around. This is just a sample code, right? Nothing too fancy going on here. I do recommend you change it around. You can also experiment with making your own website here if this is something that you want to use. But this is the website that we'll be using for our Jenkins. Okay. So once you have that, I also recommend getting an Azure account. So uh, the cloud platform that we're using today is going to be Azure from Microsoft. And the good thing about the Azure portal or Azure in general is that it does not require a credit card. So you will not need a credit card to register if you have a student account. So um, let me get that link for you all as well. And that should give you about $100 in credits for Azure, which makes it a lot easier to do any sort of cloud related work. And this right here is the link. It is azure.microsoft.com/free/students, and that should get you to the Azure page. And then I'll just give a few minutes for you all to get your Azure accounts ready. And in doing this, you'll have an Azure account. It'll have about $100 worth of credits in it. So when we do spin up our virtual machines that we need to use for our cloud-based CI/CD pipeline, then we don't need to spend any of our own money out of pocket. And this is through the GitHub Student Developer Pack as well. Highly recommend you all check that out if you haven't already. It gives a bunch of great free stuff. You can get free deployments on Heroku, I believe. It gives, actually, we could search it up right here. The GitHub Student Developer Pack. So again, make sure to sign up for it if you don't have it already. These are just a bunch of lessons that you can take if you wanted to. And then it has a lot of other offers as well. You have DigitalOcean, cloud hosting, Namecheap. You can get free or cheap domains or free domains. And then this is what we're going with today. We're going to be getting Microsoft Azure Cloud Services. No credit card required is the key part over here. And right, you get a lot of you get a lot of access to other things. If you're not over 18, they do have another Microsoft Azure for ages 13 through 17. I think this is just a little bit more limited. I'm not sure exactly what the difference is between this and the 18 plus version, but you should still be able to take care of everything. And again, there's a lot of other, free resources that are given over here. So we do highly recommend you do a deeper dive into this later on. All right, Shraddha just joined. Okay, making an Azure account fast. All right, that is great. Yeah, so we're just gonna give a few more minutes for you all. And if once you have created your Azure account, please do let me know. That way I know where everyone is at. Yeah, this was the Heroku credit that they also give $13 a month for 24 months, so that is pretty good. Okay, the other guy is setting up 2FA. Then should be good to go. And then once you are in Azure, then your homepage should look something like this. Now you won't have any recents because I was just having I was running some test instances before this just to make sure everything worked properly. But when you're ready to go, then it should look something like this for you right here. And you should have like create a resource up here, and then a lot of other tabs and things of that sort. So once you see this, do let me know, and then we can move forward. All right, looks like we have Blood Bro 2 ready to go. That's good. We'll wait for maybe one or two more people to confirm, then we will continue. And signed up, how did I get to this page? This is just a home page. So if you go to portal.azure.com /home, this is where it should take you. Or if you click on this Microsoft Azure um, title, this should also take you there. And let me know if you were able to reach that. And let's see, you already have an Azure account. Hopefully you have enough credits, right? That is really what this entire thing is based off of. You can obviously tweak what virtual machine we're going to be using for it, so it shouldn't be a huge issue. But as long as you have some credit in there, you should be good to go. Okay, perfect, perfect. Looks like we have a lot more people that are finishing up, but that's good, that's good. Okay, awesome. In that case, we can move forward. So next up, what we'll actually want to do is create a new resource. So what we need to do is create a virtual machine. So you can just click on create a resource and create a virtual machine. That should be the very first one. So you can just click on create over here. Then it's going to give you a ton of options, and I'll walk you all through this. So don't fret too much. So for your subscription, you'll probably be using Azure for Students just because that's that's where your credits are at. And then you can create a new resource group if you want, or select an existing one if you have it already. Either way, it should not matter. I'm just going to create a new one called Global Hack Week, and that should be good. Okay. And then my virtual machine name, again, you can name it anything you want. I'm just going to name it Global Hack Week. Region, this really just depends on where you're at. You'll want to choose the region that's closest to you. So I'm just going to be using US East, but again, you can choose whichever one you would like. For availability zone, you can ignore that. Security type, all of this should not matter. For image, you want to make sure that Ubuntu is selected. So you're using the Ubuntu server, LTS. So Ubuntu server 24.04 LTS. The actual version doesn't matter too much, but you do want to make sure that is in Ubuntu LTS server. And then for your size itself, the standard size is fine. So standard B2s, you can just leave it to that. It is a smaller workload. It says $30 a month. Again, you can obviously end the process after this month if you so please. Should not be an issue at all. And again, we don't need too much memory. We don't need too much CPU. All we're doing with this is running a Jenkins job. So it should be pretty simple. Okay, we have our SSH public key as an authentication type. Everything else should be fine. Key pair name, global hack week key is good. And then for public inbound ports, we want to configure our inbound rules to allow traffic on 8080 because that is what we're going to be using. So you can just select that. So check the HTTP 80, and that should allow access to our machine. All right. And then we can go into this in more detail, check everything else out. Honestly, everything else should be fine. None of that really matters. I do want to verify that the IP address and all the other information is correct. Our load balancing shouldn't matter too much. Management as well looks good. Monitoring should be fine. We will not need to care about any of the advanced settings. So just to double check, we want to make sure that we have all of our info here correct. As soon as it's done loading. So yeah, this is a quick review of all the options that we had in the first page. So you can see that we're on Azure for Students as a subscription. I created a new resource group and named the virtual machine GHW. I recommend you all also name it this just in case, right? But again, it just depends on what your VM is. And then everything else over here looks good. we want to make sure the image is an Ubuntu server LTS. So that should be selected. And the size is just the size of a standard V2s. And then we do want to make sure that we are allowing for HTTP inbound ports as well as SSH. So both of these should be selected. I selected no for for Azure Spot just because I want to, I want to have a reliable connection. But if you want to save money, then you can also select this, and it may kick you out. I wouldn't recommend it. Again, you can always power the VM down or shut it off after the stream is over. And then once you have all of this information, you'll want to select create, and that should actually create the machine. So you do want to make sure you download your private key, all right, just in case. So don't forget to download that. Mine's called GHW_key.pem, and it should be deploying now. So let me know when yours is done deploying, and then we can move on from there. It's going to take a little bit time to deploy. Then once it's done, okay, there we go. It is ready. So I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes for you all to also get your deployment completed. And then once you have it complete, you'll just want to select go to resource. And this is where you get all the information for your VM. And do let me know if you were able to connect or if you're having any issues so that I can help you out there. So Guy, were you able to get all the options? If not, I'd recommend just scrolling back in the video or in the stream. You should be able to rewatch that part, and it should be good. To switch zones, yeah. Again, the zone is really just dependent on where you're at in the world because that does affect the performance of your VM, right? So we will not need to connect with the SSH key. You should have made sure you downloaded the PEM file that was that they asked you to download is the key right here, ghwkey.pem. So as long as you downloaded that, then you should be good. And then that will be the next step. Okay. Hopefully everyone has gone to here. Okay, we have Ale Guy at resources as well. So now that we're here, we really just want to keep track of our public IP address. This is what we're going to be using for the majority of this entire sort of stream, right? So we want to make sure we know what our public IP address is, and then we actually want to try and SSH into our VM, right? So to do that, what you'll want to do is just open up your terminal or your command prompt or whatever it might be on your machine. So I'm going to open up the terminal. And let me share my terminal with you all. So this is the terminal. Hopefully it looks clear enough. And we just want to SSH into our VM. So for that, you are going to do SSH and then whatever your username was. So the user that I believe I had was just Azure user. And then and then whatever the IP address for your VM was. So for me, it would be this. For you, it might be something else. And then over here, it's going to say, okay, the authenticity couldn't be established. Key is not known by any other names. Yes, we do want to continue connecting. And then it says you're going to get a little error over here that says permission denied public key. That's because we actually need to use the key that we generated earlier for this as well. So to do that, you want to actually just locate where the key is on your machine. Mine is currently in my downloads folder, or currently in my downloads file, right? And what you want to do there is SSH using that. So it'll end up looking something like this, where the command is ssh-i, and then for me, it would be downloads/GHW key .pem right here. And then this should give you another error. So the error over here is going to be that the permissions are bad, specifically for our private key, because the keys themselves actually need a very low level of read-write access, right? You shouldn't be able to write to the key. You should only be able to read and basically have minimal permissions for it. So what we need to do is actually change the permissions. I think they're currently, yeah, there's 644 right now. So that's too open for the key that we're working with. So what we need to do is change that to 400. So if you just run a chmod chmod 400 on that specific file, then you should be able to connect. So you can see that I changed the permissions. Let's change permissions to 400, point to the key itself. And then now if I tried to connect, it should allow me to. And then I'm in. All right, and let me exit out and then bring those commands back up. So again, you want to first change the key permissions to 400, and then you should be able to SSH into it. Okay, just bring that up over here. There we go. So this is something what it should look like. And again, if anyone's having any troubles or any questions, please do let me know. And again, for this, you'll want to use, everyone should be Azure user as a default, but make sure to use your IP address and not a different one. So we have a question on Windows. What is the equivalent to the changing of file permissions command? Let me double check that. I'm actually not sure. Okay, for that, I think you need to do a lot more. Or you could do it two ways. There's one from the GUI itself and then one from PowerShell. So let me send this Medium article that I found to the chat. That should answer the question. If you do the GUI version, I think that's the easiest. I would recommend that. Again, this isn't best practices, just to clarify. You shouldn't just be leaving your key file in your downloads folder. You'd normally just be adding it to your environment variables or something of that sort, or to your SSH folder or file. So this again is just a temporary example for the sake of demonstration. And let me bring that back up there. What's the difference between a 600 and a 400? So there's actually a language that's used for how all these file permissions work. That is a whole nother can of worms that I probably won't be getting into, but I do recommend you like just search up if you search up like permissions on Linux or like just get a quick explanation on that, then you should be able to see what everything does. So at a very high level, it's user group and anybody else. So again, this in 400, we're just limiting it to the user. And then I believe it's read, write, execute. We are limiting ours to just read. So we're just allowing this thing to read it, or just allowing the user to read, giving 400, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if I can find a good visual for it. Okay, yeah, here's a pretty good visual. So this core actually has a really good description. And again, it's basically just 400. The first one is the owner of the file, and 4 is read only, and then 0 is no permissions for anything else. So we're basically only allowing the current user to be able to read the file, and then the user group or anybody else cannot do anything. So that's a very quick crash course on file permissions, but so I did say that correctly. Again, very, very quick course on file permissions. 600 I think would allow for execute as well. No, that would allow for write, and then execute would be 700 if I'm not mistaken. But again, that is a different can of worms. You can absolutely go and do some more research on that. Is there a good resource to learn about how to secure your keys? Um, Key security is, again, that really just depends on the type of security you're doing. That is, again, cybersecurity, which is a whole nother can of worms. I'm actually working on that for work, doing that for work right now. And it really just depends on what kind of keys you have, um, and what your infrastructure is. So because it varies so much depending on what your use cases for it and what type of keys you're using. Are you using like SSH keys? Are you using like X509 certificates or some other way of security? Again, it really just depends. So I would recommend doing a little bit more research on your own on your specific use case, because again, it is a very, very broad subject. Someone said ask Gemini. Yeah, that is also a good idea. You could ask Gemini. Hello, Kosu. Um, a quick recap, I do recommend just going back in the video or going back in the stream and being able to see what happened so far, because we are around 30 minutes in and a lot of it was just setup. So what we did was we got a GitHub repo. So we just got access to a GitHub repo and forked that for our own use. And then we created an Azure account. And right now we're just setting up Azure. Okay, perfect. So hopefully everyone was able to SSH into here. And if you were successfully able to SSH, it should end up looking something like this, where it says Azure user at, and then whatever your VM name is, in my case, Global Hack Week. And once you're in here, that means you have everything running properly so far. Now we just need to do a lot of installation stuff, again, to set up our virtual machine. So if you look at the virtual machine, there's absolutely nothing in here, right? It's a completely empty machine with nothing going on. So what we want to do is we want to add some stuff, right? So first thing we need is, because we're using Jenkins and Jenkins is Java based, we need to install Jenkins. So before we do that, let's run a quick update. So sudo apt update, and that should just update all the packages that are currently on the machine. And again, sudo just means you're running it as a super user, and then apt update is just specific to Ubuntu, as far as the update command. And then we want to install Java. So for that, sudo apt install. And then we need to install at least Java 17 because I think that's the latest version that is supported by, or one of the lowest versions supported by Jenkins. So let's make sure we do that. So it'd be OpenJDK. So open Java Developer Kit 17-17-JDK, and then -y. And let me actually copy paste that command into the chat so that you all also can just copy that and don't have to worry about typing it all from scratch. Yeah, so right now I am showing just the terminal. I'm not sure why it's blurry. Let me see if making this larger improves the resolution. I don't think that improved it. What if I made it smaller? Oh, it's a little more legible, but still not amazing. Huh. Yeah, unfortunately, we might have to leave it like this. But again, if you do have any questions as far as what's being said or what is being typed into the terminal, please do let me know, and I'll do my best to respond. So this is the command that you'll be running. Sudo apt install openjdk-17-jdk-y. And it looks like everything was able to install. Now we can actually verify if the installation was correct or not. Let's check using Java version. And if this is correct, then we should get a Java version or OpenJDK version of 17.x, and that means it is correct. Okay. Next up, we want to install Jenkins. And now this is a significantly longer command, which I'm going to actually share with you all and just copy paste from my notes. So basically what this is doing is installing Jenkins, the Jenkins package, right? It's not doing anything too fancy, so don't worry. This is just a command to install Jenkins. And let me put up. So if I try and run this, then you can see the actual Jenkins binary was installed, and then I can run the actual command to install that using, ooh, this thing will not let me copy. This very long command, and then let me send that as well into the chat. This is the next command that we're doing. We're just trying to make sure that everything is installing properly. And then we just want to run another update just in case. So sudo update, make sure everything is good to go. Once it reads all the packages, looks like all the packages look good. And then we can just install Jenkins. Sudo apt install Jenkins -y. And then this should actually take care of the installation. Okay. Hopefully everyone is here so far. Let's see if we have any questions in the chat. Yeah, of course. No, thank you for asking the question, Priyanka. Hopefully you were, yeah, hopefully it's a little clearer now. I don't know. It's just a matter of, I think, the screen size. Is app just a package manager? Could you compare it conceptually to something like package.json in Node? Yeah, at a very high level, it is a package manager. It's like app literally stands for advanced package tool. So it's just a package manager. And let's see, Shredder said, could someone tell you how to connected the VM? So no, we did not use the Azure CLI. What we did for that was we were able to SSH into it. So again, we had to first change the key permissions so that we're able to actually use the key, and then using the key, we're able to SSH in. And the command I used to install Jenkins was just sudo apt install jenkins-y. I can send that as well in the chat. And again, all the chat should have all the instructions on installing everything. Then we'll give it a couple minutes for everyone to catch up and get everything installed, make sure everything looks good, and then we can move on. So please do let me know when you are able to install everything. That way I know when I can move forward. Let me see if I can actually improve the screen share quality. Okay, I found something that might work. Let's see. Hopefully this is a little bit clearer now. Not as blurry. Done. No apt package Jenkins, but there's a snap with that name. Let's see, Tarun, your error seems interesting. You said you did the above two sudo wget and echo. Did you also install OpenJDK? So do you have Java installed as well? Interesting. I'd recommend copying it one more time, see if you were able to copy it correctly. If not, I would recommend, let's see. Jenkins, Turunet, CI/CD, deploy. Huh. Yeah, I think it's probably just an issue with the way it was copy pasted. All right, glad this looks a lot better. Okay. Yeah, I think I just had to zoom in a little bit and then that worked. Okay. And again, do let me know if you were able to get everything installed. And once you have something that looks like this, where everything says done and Jenkins is already the newest version, then that means you are ready to go. So let me know when you've reached that point. And then we can move on. Okay, Ale guy. Looks like Ale guy was the first one to get it. That's great. Don't know how to send the thumbs up. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's even a supported option, although that would be nice, right? Have some reactions. Yeah, you do need to run the sudo update command just to make sure that it's able to update all the binaries and understand what's going on in the machine before you're able to actually install it. So this is, we have one person who's ready. Hopefully we get a few more people pretty soon, and then we should be ready to move on. Tarun's probably just about ready once all the packages install. Same command on Mac, yes, because we're currently SSH'd into a virtual machine, and that virtual machine itself is actually running Linux. So whether you're on a MacBook or on a Linux machine or on a Windows machine, you're accessing the same shell right now, and this right now is a Linux shell. So some of the commands that will work on here, like sudo or I think ls even, might not work on a Windows terminal. So they should all be the same. All right, looks like Tarun's done. And okay, that's good. In that case, I think we can move on to actually starting and enabling Jenkins. So let's start and enable Jenkins. So for that, it would be sudo systemctl enable Jenkins. So we're enabling Jenkins here, and then it has executed that. Now let's do the same thing, but now we're going to start Jenkins instead of enabling, because now it has already been enabled. And then let's check the status of it to make sure it has started up. So we can again erase this and status. And we can see that now we have an active or a running instance of Jenkins. So let me send all of those commands into the chat so that you have access to those. So Priyanka asked, enable versus start Jenkins, what's the difference? So enable is just yeah, enabling it is just prepping it to essentially start, right? It's just, telling it, hey, activate it essentially, and then starting it actually starts up the Jenkins server, because it is disabled by default. So again, sudo systemctl and then enable Jenkins, then start Jenkins, then you're checking the status of it. And if the status shows active, that means you're doing everything correctly and you're on the right path. You're welcome, Priyanka. Okay, and once you all have this ready and it is running and active, then please do let me know. That way we can keep moving on. So again, more to the point that was said earlier on enabled versus starting it, right? So when you're actually loading all the service itself, it's disabled obviously by default. So you need to first enable it before running it. So if you did enable and then ran a status check, then you'll be able to see that this is enabled, but it's not currently active. And then once you actually start it, then it should show that it is active and running. And once again, please do let me know once you're done. And again, to exit out of this, just hit Q and you should be able to exit out of the status. Okay, we have some people finishing up. That is good. That's good. All right. It is now 50 minutes, so almost an hour into our workshop. So I'm going to let you all go right now with a quick, maybe 10-minute break should be good. So a quick 10-minute break, and then we will get right back and then actually work on checking out what the Jenkins instance looks like, and then working on the deployment. So actually connecting our GitHubs to Jenkins and seeing how all that works. Okay, so this was really like I guess the most difficult process, I want to say, right? So we were able to start up a cloud VM, so it's running in the cloud. We were able to connect to it locally, so we connect to it through our shell, and we were able to install Jenkins on that cloud server, and now we are running Jenkins on that cloud server, and you can see that over here. So next we're going to go into the UI and do a lot more fun stuff, right? But again, that is for after the break. So in the meantime, I will let you all go, grab a drink of water, do whatever you need to, and we'll be back in exactly 10 minutes at the top of the hour. All right. And again, if you do have any questions, please do put them in the chat. right. Bring the Okay, there we go. Music's off. Okay, it looks like we gave people enough time to catch up, hopefully. So, um, everyone should be on the same page now. That is good. That is what we're looking for. And I'll just give it a couple more minutes for people to start filing in. And again, if anyone has any questions, please do let me know now, and that would be a great time to ask while we have some time before we dive into our next part. Okay, so again, quick recap of what we did was we got Microsoft Azure for students, right? And $100 credits to go with it. Then we spun up our own Azure instance, a VM of an Ubuntu VM, sorry. And then we basically set that up to run Jenkins. So we're using that as our Jenkins server in the cloud. Next up, let's actually jump right into it. We will be getting our admin password, right? So the way Jenkins works is that the admin password is actually stored on the machine when you download Jenkins for the very first time, and then you normally would want to create a new user. We probably won't because we don't need one, but let's do that next. So to retrieve the initial admin password, we can just go sudo cat so we actually can see what's in here. And I believe the file is lib and then Jenkins secrets and then see what's after here. Oops. I believe it's initial admin password. I think this is it. Okay, yeah. And then you should be given an admin password that you can just copy and store somewhere. I will just be storing it on a sticky note on my laptop, but again, you can store it anywhere you would like. Where is my sticky note? Not showing up. Okay, there it is. Okay, so I just stored it on there. Let me clear that out. So that's going to be your Jenkins admin password. Okay, and once again, this right here is the command. Let me actually just copy and paste that, send it to the chat so you all have access to it as well. And next, we actually want to check this out, right? We want to go and see the UI, right? We want to see the GUI, see if everything that we worked for is actually there. So to do that, what we're going to do is just going to our IP address, :8080, and we should be able to complete the setup that way. So let me present my screen, and this will be this window again. Yes. Okay, there we go. So now you'll want to go back to here and you want to copy your public IP address again. So get that, and you're going to want to actually go there. So http / copy this :8080, and make sure it is HTTP and not HTTPS. So over here, that is, it might trip some people up. So again, it should be HTTP / and then your IP address :8080. And if you go here, you should be greeted, hopefully, fingers crossed, with a UI. And this is very slow. Yeah, so the IP address is the one for the VM. This is the one that you use to SSH into it. And this is also the one we're going to be using for getting to the UI. So yes, it is the one that you could get from right here on your Azure VM. It's taking an interestingly long amount of time. Hopefully it works. HTTP. One 72:8080. Interesting. Okay, it looks like everyone is having that same issue. Again, make sure you are using HTTP and not HTTPS. And it was partially able to connect. Yes, we do. Let's double check that actually. If the inbound, so Tarun brought up a good idea to add inbound rule to allow traffic on port 8080. That is likely what the issue is. So if you go back to your Azure and check out the networking, you can go to network settings, and over here, yes, that is the issue. We can create a port rule with an inbound port rule. Port ranges, any source, any destination port ranges are going to be 8080. And then I'm just leaving everything completely open and changing this to the highest priority, which is 100. And this should hopefully work now. So good call out, Tarun. Golden star for you. Unfortunately, I don't have access to do any swag drops, right? If I could, I think that would be a good call out for doing a swag drop right there. But uh, again, you just want to add an inbound security rule. That's just in the networking tab, network settings. And then you just want to have a destination port range of 8080, any source, and again, any protocol, action allow, and highest possible priority. And then we can add that. That should create a new security rule. And if we try and refresh this, then we should get something that looks like this right here. All right. And Shroda, thank you as well. Yeah, we did not allow port 8080 inbound traffic, so that is absolutely correct. That's what happened. Okay, so we already got our administrator password from earlier, right? So now all we need to do is copy and paste that over. Continue. And we can honestly just install all the suggested plugins. We have enough room, and we're probably going to be spinning down the cluster later on anyways. So the actual storage and any of that does not matter. And it should just take a second to download all of the required modules. Okay. And do let me know if you're able to get this working. Again, if you want to take a look at, actually, let me bring this up again. So again, these are the rules for the 8080 port. If anybody else wanted to take a look at those, if you weren't able to catch that earlier. And again, please do stop me if I'm going too fast or if you do need something else as well. Okay, by now this should be completed. And now it's just going to ask us to create a first admin user. Honestly, you can do this if you want. I'm probably just going to skip this entire thing and continue as an admin. That basically means that the password that I had generated earlier is the one that I'm going to be using in the future. So again, it is completely up to you if you want to create a username and password and do all of this, but I will most likely just skip all of this and continue as an admin. This is the correct instance URL. So we have skipped the admin setup, right? We're just using the normal admin username. Again, this is not normally what you would want to do, right? This is a very insecure method of doing things. So if you were actually in a production environment, you'd want to create a new admin user, and that's sort of then nobody else who might get access to your VM will have access to your Jenkins instance because they won't be able to just get the password straight from there. They'll have to figure out what your specific admin username and password are. So now that we're done and ready to go, we can actually start using Jenkins, and we're going to have something that looks like this now. And please do let me know once you've reached this specific page. That way I know I'm good to start moving forward. So something that's interesting to note, I think right now, would be that Jenkins is highly scalable, right? So you can scale it using a bunch of agents, which are essentially worker nodes to distribute loads. Right now, we're just using one central node to do all of the work, right? Because we have a very light job that we're going to be running on this. But if you had a very heavy workload or you had a really large team that was working on this in some really large production environments, then that would be the ideal path forward, right? You'd want to use a bunch of different nodes that are working on it instead of just one single node that's very powerful, but obviously it's going to be experience a lot of lag with all of the people connected to it or the different instances connected to it and the throughput and, just the amount of stuff going on. Okay, so looks like nobody has said in the chat yet that they're ready to go, so we'll give it a couple more minutes. Okay. Y'all guys ready? That is awesome. And we'll just wait for like maybe one or two more people. And what we're going to be doing next is really just connecting Jenkins to GitHub. So in Jenkins, we should already have the Git module already installed, but just in case, because we did install it with all the recommended packages, but just to double check, we can click on Manage Jenkins and then check out the plugins. So see the plugins over here. And if we search for installed plugins, hopefully Git should be available. And yeah, it looks like we have a few Git ones, the GitHub plugin as well, and the Git plugin. So we should be good then. We do not need to install any other plugins. But again, if we did say we wanted to select exactly what plugins we want to install, then in that case, we'd have to actually manually go in and install Git. So, okay, it looks like we have a lot more people ready. That is great. So just make sure you have the Git plugin. And once we've confirmed that, we can actually add our GitHub credentials to here. So this is going to be a slightly separate, let's see, process. So for this, we're going to want to go to our manage Jenkins again, and then credentials, system, global credentials. And then what we're doing here is we're just adding our credentials for our GitHub account. And this is going to allow us to really have more control over what goes on and in terms of the interactions between GitHub and Jenkins, right? So over here, we're just going to click on add credentials. And over here, we want to actually add all of our Git credentials. So this can be global or system, either one works. We're not going to have any child items, so it shouldn't matter too much. And then over here, we want to add our username. So my GitHub username is Abdullah50053. And then the password over here is going to be the access token, actually. So in order to get the access token, so after credentials, you'll want to go to system. Let's see. All right, looks like all right. Let's go back. Actually, I think I went too fast on that part. So we went to manage Jenkins, then we went to credentials over here under security, and then under security we went to system, and then system we went to global credentials, and then we just added a credential. Another question. Is there one VM for each Jenkins node? Yes. In general, there would be one separate virtual machine. It might be communicating with the other virtual machines as well, but that's essentially what one Jenkins node would be, is one specific VM, just because it has enough compute power and it's distributed enough so that it can be accessed by teams all over the world or all over the US, instead of just being localized to one specific place. Good question. What do we do after credentials? Okay, yeah. For the plugins part, if you selected install all recommended plugins, then you should be good. But you just want to check your installed plugins, make sure you do have Git. But if you don't, then you want to install that and then restart Jenkins. Okay, so let's add our credentials now. And again, add my username. And then for the password over here, you'll want to go to your GitHub and then your GitHub settings. Then from your GitHub settings, you want to go to your developer settings all the way at the bottom, right here. And then from developer settings, you want to go to personal access tokens, fine grained tokens. And then this right here, I was creating like a test one earlier, but you'll want to generate a new token. And then, okay, it's gonna ask me to do a bunch of authentication stuff, so I can do that. Okay, there we go. And then it's gonna ask you to write like a token name. I can write like Global Hack Week. I'm the owner, it expires whenever. I don't really need a description. And then I'm specifically going to have it only work on, what was it? Global Hack Week deploy 2. Actually, I'm gonna do this on the original Global Hack Week deploy. And I'll do it on deploy 2. That's what everyone forked. And then for permissions, you want to set all the repository permissions. You can honestly set all these to read and write if you wanted to. It's not going to make any changes to anything other than this specific repo, so it should not matter. Code spaces we don't really need. Commit statuses we can add. Contents, custom properties, sure. I don't really care much about discussions, environments, or dependabots. We can do issues as well. Merge queues, PRs, security advisories, secrets, variables, give it access to the webhooks and workflows. Okay, so you can honestly just give it read-write access to everything here. It should not matter because again, it is just localized to this very specific repository. So now that we have this, we can use this over here as the password. So we can just paste it in and create. And that should now have created our unrestricted global credentials for this specifically. And now you have a connection between your GitHub and your Jenkins. And that is this right here. Next, you'll want to go back to your GitHub. And if you go to your repository that you were on, you're going to want to also add a webhook so that GitHub also is able to understand that, okay, I am getting information from Jenkins. So you'll want to go to the repository settings and repository settings to add webhooks. So webhooks and then add webhook. This one I'm going to delete because this was an older one. And for this, the payload URL is going to be http:// and then whatever your Jenkins server is. So that's just your public IP address right here. with 8080 because that is the port we're using. And oops, double copied this. / GitHub dash webhook. And then content type should be JSON. And then we are only interested in just the push event. That should be good. And make sure it is active. And we'll just add that webhook. So now we have a new webhook added that is now connected to our Jenkins server. Okay, so that was a lot, but again, if you do have any questions, please do let me know, and I will do my best to answer them. Okay, so once again, quick review of what we did was we were able to now get our Jenkins up and running after allowing the port. And okay, wait 1 second, I'm seeing something in the chat. Yeah, don't worry about the questions. I love the questions. Keep them coming. Could you say what we put for each field in the webhook? Again, yeah, absolutely. In the webhook, so the payload URL should just be HTTP, and then whatever your current whatever your IP address is / GitHub webhook, the content type is JSON. We're not having any secret. We can enable SSL verification, and we are really just want the push event to trigger the webhook. But again, you can also select send me everything if you want, because this is a temporary a temporary repo that we're working with. But normally if you'd want to, if you're doing some work where you are just running some like tests or some lint or something on this, then you'd only want to do that in the push event. But if you had something else going on, something much larger, then we can actually click on, let me select individual ones, and this will tell you everything else that happens. And all of that will also send some information to Jenkins, right? So let's say you wanted to, like every time you created a new branch, you wanted to run some test on that new branch, or every time what else is on here? Every time there was like a comment added, you wanted to like maybe check it to see if if it should be flagged for or deleted, right? In case it had some, I don't know, inappropriate language, for instance, on some open source project. So there's a lot that you can do here, right? And again, it would just be really dependent on what's going on over here. But the default is just git pushes. So any pushes to the repository, then you run some sort of check. Okay, perfect. So it looks like we have this webhook now. Let me just double check. Last delivery was not successful. Okay, we'll worry about that later. But now that we have this, right, now we want to configure the build triggers in Jenkins itself, right? So now we can just open up a new Jenkins job. And what we're creating now is a pipeline. So we can enter an item name. I'm just going to call it Global Hack Week. And it's going to be a pipeline. So this is just, again, orchestrating long-running activities that can span multiple build agents. So this is suitable for building pipelines, and that's what we're doing. And let's just create that. And it's going to ask us for some information. Over here, everything does look fine. We can specify the GitHub project URL if we wanted to. So I'm going to do that. Tell it that we are in this specific GitHub project. And then this triggers part is pretty interesting. So this really depends on what you want to do. You can either build periodically. So this is on a very specific schedule, almost like a cron job, right? So if I wanted to, I could also run this. Let's say I wanted to run it every night on top of every time somebody pushed it. I could do that. So that would be there's like a specific language for it. If I did I think it's h over 15, that's every 15 minutes, I believe. So do one more. Okay, there we go. So this is basically saying that the last time this would have run is 11:14 universal time, and then the next run is would be at 11:29 p.m. Coordinated universal time. So this is just running every 15 minutes, so hour over 15, every 15 minutes, and or 4 times an hour, essentially, is what this is saying. So the way this works is I think it's minute, and then the next one is hour, stars for any, then day, day of the month, and then like day of the week or something like that. They have more information if you go to their help schedule or if you go to their help pages, but that's sort of at a high level what's going on there. You can also, what we're going to be doing is either a GitHub hook, right, for actually seeing what's going on. This again is just saying that, okay, when the Jenkins receives the GitHub push hook, then it checks to see if that's coming from the Git repository that was matched earlier. And if it is, then it triggers that sort of polling to happen. So for pipeline, we're going to select pipeline script from SCM. SCM is going to be Git, and then we need to add our repository and our credentials again. So our credentials we already set, repository URL, we can just set that once again, and that should be good. And we are building the master branch specifically. So again, this is sort of more going into the actual pipeline creation part of it, where we are creating a pipeline script from the SCM. So we're going to be creating a Jenkins file, and that Jenkins file is what's going to be running through everything. And what this is going to be using to figure out what it needs to execute. So I'll give another couple of minutes for everyone to get that done. Again, repository browser, we don't need any of this. Script path, Jenkins file, this is correct. And we don't need to check out anything advanced over here. And let me just save that, and then I can open it up again so everyone can see it. Configure right here. So again, we have a GitHub project, specific every 15 minutes we're running it. This is just a sample, and then GitHub trigger for polling, and then we're using this pipeline script from Git specifically. And let me know when you all have that working. And then you just save that, and that should work. Okay, El guy says thinks you think you have it. That is awesome. All right. So again, just as a sort of test, I did already add one Jenkins file in there, and we can actually take a quick look at that. So if we go to the code, we can see that there is a Jenkins file in here. And this Jenkins file basically tells Jenkins what to do in the pipeline. So again, you can see that there's a pipeline over here. Any agent, right now, again, we're only using one agent because we only have one node, but this would sort of distribute the tasks if you wanted it to. Then it has various stages, right? So in this case, we have about 3 different stages. In this case, our first stage is just doing a very simple echo command, right? It's just echoing basically a hello world command, seeing if that's working. Then we have a check system info command, and that's just saying, okay, what's the system information over here? And then it's just listing all the files in this specific workspace. So that should just list everything that is in the GHW-deploy2 repo over here. Okay, and we can actually manually also start a build. So if you click on build now over here, that should start the first build ever. So let's quickly do that, and that should schedule a build. You can see now that we have this thing running over here, and looks like it was able to pass successfully. So we can refresh this, and we'll see that, okay, we have our last build, or build number 2, that ran 12 seconds ago. If we click on this, we'll get more information about this build as well. So again, there's a lot of info over here, but this specifically will say any changes that might have happened to the code base. Again, we made no changes to the code, so nothing is going to show up here. This is really where we're going to see the most of what we worked on happening, right? So the console output over here is getting the, we can actually go through the console output to see what's going on, right? So we can see over here that it knows that we're, or the admin user is the one that started it, so it does have, basically blame. You can blame somebody if they're doing something wrong. You have the Jenkins file that's been obtained from this specific repository, and then it's running Jenkins in this specific workspace right here. And you can see that, okay, this is just doing a lot of setup stuff. And then once it's done with all that, then it actually starts. So the first stage is, again, just echoing hello world, and it was able to output that. So we see that it outputted it to the console. Then we're checking all the system information, and we can see that, okay, we are on Linux machine, right? And this is exactly what we spun up earlier. So we can see that is absolutely correct right here, what we have. And then we just have all the files being outputted over here as well. We can see those are also all correct. And then it finishes with success. Okay, so again, you all were just now able to run your very first Jenkins job. Again, that was fully manual though. So let's try and see if an automated deployment does work. So if we were trying to make some sort of changes to it, would that work or would it not, right? So for that, what we can do is let's clone this repo locally. So I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code for that. So you can just clone it locally on your machine, and then let's make some changes and then push those. I feel like I'm going a little fast. I haven't looked at the chat for a bit. Let's make sure that everyone's good. No one's... Okay, looks like I'm not seeing anyone with any questions. Again, if you do have any questions, though, please do put them in the chat. Now is the time to, because we are going a little bit faster now. Okay, this is a good repo destination. Let's open that up. Okay, AL guy with another question. I love that. Could you show how to view build after pressing run build? Got there by accident. Yeah, absolutely. So let me try and get there on purpose. If you clicked build now and you had a build scheduled, it should run over here. We have number 3. We can see that, okay, it's like halfway done. Time remaining about 2 seconds left. It's done now. So we can either click on this to get the console output, or if you're on status right now, that's normally where you would be if you manually did it, you can always hit refresh and that would show you the last build. So you just need to reload the page and that should get you there. And then you can just click on that and that'll take you to the last build itself. Good question. Again, there's a lot of stuff that happened here. A lot of this you probably won't be using at all, right? But a lot of it's pretty straightforward as well. So again, any changes that we make in the code will show up here. We're going to see that shortly. The console we went over. If we wanted to edit some of the build information, let's say this was like a really important build, right? Really important build. We could add that here and then add a description here as well and just save that, and that will edit the build information itself. So now we know that this is the name of the build instead of it just being a number, right? Instead of it just being number 3 and getting lost with all the other ones. We can see how long things took as well, right? Normally you want to make sure that these pipelines are as quick as possible. So sometimes, because I actually work with this a lot at my job, is in when you're actually pushing something, then you end up waiting a really long time for maybe one or two specific tasks to run. All the other tasks run pretty quickly. So what you want to do over here is just see, okay, what's taking so long? And then you can really understand why it's taking so long and see if does it need to take that long, or is there some issue with the infrastructure? Is there some issue in the code? What's going on? So this is a really great way of doing that. This is the Git build data. This is just specific to the GitHub stuff itself, right? So the actual Git hash, the repository, the branch, all of that information. This is an overview for the pipeline itself. So this is sort of the process that went, right? So you saw earlier that we had the different sort of stages going on, and this actually breaks everything out by each of those stages. So you can see we have stage 0 really, where we're doing the checkout stage. That's checking everything out from version control. Then we have the echo hello world stage, the check system info stage, and then we're listing all the files in our directory stage, and that should be it. So that'll just show you the full overview of what's going on in the pipeline overview. This is the console for the pipeline itself. So we don't need to take a look at this, right? But this is, again, if you just look at every single if you wanted to break things down by each stage, so if you had one really important stage that you're like, hey, I want to see what this thing outputted, and again, these can be like hundreds of stages long. So you can go to like whatever stage is important to you, see what's going on, and you'll be able to see, okay, this is what happened, or this is what the output was, and it saves so much time instead of you having to manually scroll through the entire console output. Okay. Um, let's go back to a really important build. And then again, all the other ones are pretty straightforward. We're going to restarting, replaying, and then the different pipeline steps that were going on. This is just the same thing in a lot more detail. And then the workspaces, so what the workspace that's being built in is. Okay, hopefully that was a really, really quick crash course on like Jenkins. So hopefully that was sufficient, at least for a really, really general amount of knowledge. Do you have one question? What other tools can be used in place of Jenkins? So you can have other like CI or CD tools. You can break those down into two separate parts. Jenkins is just really useful because this is actually used in industry a lot. So this is, I think, one of the most used tools in industries just because it's open source, really easy to set up, and super powerful, right? It's insanely powerful for what it is. So a lot of people just prefer using Jenkins. There are some that are closed source and some that are built into some applications, right? So for example, actually, GitHub itself has some, you can actually set up some CI/CD stuff over here as well, right? With different like GitHub actions, you can create some specific checks, but those are normally linked to something else as well. So there's not just a standalone tool that's taking care of everything. You can see that we have Jenkins right now, right? Where we have our go to the pipeline overview. We have our different pipelines, but each of these stages are really just doing like really simple shell commands. What you could also do to sort of expand on this is have like instead of just echoing something, it runs a different like file or runs a different you know it runs maybe a linter, it runs something else, and that's really just to check the code quality, and that's normally what people use Jenkins for. Um, So other tools, you could Google like any other alternatives for Jenkins, but I know like GitHub is pretty popular. GitLab has some, so they just tried building it in locally. But again, if you're doing something that's on like a much larger scale, then I think Jenkins is one of the most commonly used CI/CD workflow providers. Okay, let's see. So Tarun said you just updated the README from the browser itself, but didn't see any build initiated. Interesting. I think the browser might be an issue because there's no push. Wait, push should still be there. Um, let me try testing this on my VS Code. So let me share this. So screen sharing, present, share screen, window, welcome. There we go. All this is fine. README, cloud. What should we update? Let's update our Jenkins file. What could be something else that we wanted to do? Add another echo stage here. So you can see if this is actually updating. Oop. And that did not. Okay. Hello. Update Jenkins file. And then let's push this. You can push. And let's see if that started anything. Okay, it looks like the last build is still a really important build. So on push, it did not change anything. But this did. Okay, so we can see there is some check pending, and that is a different check, not this one. Okay, looks like there's some issue with the pipeline. Let's try and debug that. Let's go back to the configuration, GitHub project. Okay, let's not build after this. Just do a full polling. And we are not doing anything remotely. Okay, so it should just be the GitHub hook trigger alone. Everything else should be correct. Save that. Try and push something else. Sorry, I'm not sharing my VS Code screen because I feel like that takes longer than it would to write all this up. So let me push this again now. Okay, that's been pushed. You're seeing a new one over here. Yeah, that looks good. And over here, oof, build also did not show. Okay, so I think it might be an issue with the webhook then that we have in the settings over here. Okay, yeah, it says last delivery was not successful. Should disable SSL certificates. And I do not want to send everything. Okay, let's update that. See if that works. Server webhook is correct. IP address is correct. It is on 8080. Hmm. Hmm. Strange. Okay, let me try to run a quick post command on here. Ping it, see if it's active. What is that? Curl dash X post and then this GitHub webhook. Okay, there's some configuration issue somewhere with the webhook itself, but I'm not sure why it is not working. I think it might have something to do with the way it's receiving the webhook in Jenkins. But we are running low on time. I do want to get this working though. Let's see. Schedule another build real quick. And this one failed. Oh. Oh, duplicate stage name. Did not know that was not allowed. Okay, and this one should pass. Okay, there we go. So it looks like right now only manual builds are working for some reason, but you can see now that it shows the different changes that we made, right? And on GitHub, it'll show you like the diffs as well. And this is the console output. So I just added a few more echo commands. I do want to figure out why the GitHub hook isn't working. Polling has not run yet. Yeah, okay. So it is an issue with this. So you got automatic build in Jenkins, even the webhook is not delivered. That could be because of the 15-minute polling that we set up earlier. So every 15 minutes that's like runs automatically. It is likely, it's probably because of that if the webhook is not being delivered. Manage Jenkins again. Let's check out the credentials. System, unrestricted global. This one right here says it was used. It is being used. And it was used for 5. Okay. The issue is wait, can you confirm that the build that you got was because of the webhook though and not because of the polling? Okay, I'm looking at some documentation here. It looks like what we're doing is correct. Let's try and uncheck this, and then we trigger it as a hook. Oh, no, that's not it. I'm assuming this is like a firewall issue or something then. Let me test that theory. See if we can take down any firewall that's up right now. Okay, firewall isn't even enabled, so that's not the issue. Uh, hmm. Okay, and we are getting a response when we're putting in a post message. That's really interesting. Oops, there it is. Let's see. So this is all the push that we had. The post did not work. Well, you can see all the metadata as well with it. It's cool. Okay, let me try something. This is obviously not best practice, but I'm just going to make it so that it has basically full accesses to everything. So we're going to create a new webhook really quickly. JSON no secret, send me everything. And maybe it has something to do with the token that we created earlier as well. Hook has never been triggered. Let's try and trigger it using a readme edit. And then go back to our webhooks and see what happened. Okay, yeah, again, unsuccessful. All right, I'm not sure I'll be able to debug this in the next 8 minutes. I do plan on doing so, but or like debugging it later on. But again, if you all are able to figure it out before me, that's even better. Yeah, okay, exactly 15 minutes. Stack Overflow. I'm not able to open this up for some reason. How do I copy? Okay, I'm not able to copy that. But okay, let me list. The link should be HTTP 208080. Yeah, webhook. I don't know if the slash would change anything, but let's try it. Can we just undo this commit? Yeah, let's do that. Readme. It's here, edit here, and I don't know, add this again. Commit, settings, webhooks. Oh, last delivery was successful. Wow, that did fix it. Okay. Huge shout out to Didi. I don't know how to pronounce that. Dianchi, I think. Okay, that looks like the last delivery was successful. Recent deliveries. Looks okay. Workflow run is in progress right now. Let's go back to here and see if we have anything new. Okay, amazing. We have build number 6 23 seconds ago. So this it does seem like it is what fixed it, right? The two README updates are now also showing up here. So okay, shout out. This is exactly what it was. Wow, that's really annoying. How long do we spend on that? Like 10 minutes on a broken forward slash? Okay. Token does not have access to any repositories. To GitHub generated token. Oh, you should have had it so that it did connect to a repository for the GitHub token itself. So it should have been connected to maybe one repository. If you created it without it being attached to any, then you might also be getting errors. All right, looks like Ale Guy was also able to get that sorted using that specific, using that solution. That's awesome, sort of. So what isn't working then, Ale Guy? Yep, the joys of being a programmer. Okay, that's great. So we were able to get this working. Now, with 5 minutes left, unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot that we could do that I wanted to do, but oh, okay, yeah. It does take some time, and this is actually much quicker than most builds take. At work, I think they take anywhere from 40 minutes to 3 hours, depending on the payload and what's being changed. I think the longest I've ever had to wait for a Jenkins job to complete was around 8 hours or so. So yeah, a few seconds is, it seems like a long time right now, but you know, that's on the lower end for sure. Okay, it looks like Shredda said mine did too. I set the wrong branch on SCM. Okay, it looks like everyone's getting it working now. That's perfect. That's awesome. Okay, I'm really sad that we weren't able to do more with the Jenkins file itself. So I'm going to give you all homework if you want to do it. This is optional homework, right? But I recommend, going in and seeing what you can actually change in the Jenkins file itself, maybe so that it could like automatically deploy to some sort of, to like say Vercel, for example, or so that you can run a linter through it or something of that sort, right? So I highly recommend maybe running a linter or figuring out how to do that and just integrating that into your Jenkins pipeline. And doing that would actually be extremely helpful, right? That's something that's used a lot in many companies is just a linter, a very simple check to see if your code is up to very like those bare minimum quality standards. And if it is, then it will move on to maybe the next stages, right? The stages that we have defined over here in the Jenkins file. Otherwise, it will fail at that stage and then just end, right? And then it'll make room for any other runs that need to take place. So, okay, it looks like thankfully everyone was able to get it working. Once again, huge shout out to whoever said to put the slash at the end. That was the issue. That's a very, again, annoying issue to have, but we were able to fix it, so that's great. I do want to uh, highlight that we do have one um, link that we are advised to send to everybody. It's basically for feedback on Global Hack Weeks. Again, it doesn't have to be specific to the stream. It can be if you wanted it to be, but this is a great way to uh, let MLH know what you enjoy about Global Hack Week, what you might want to see changed, and what we could do in the future with it, right? So if you have something else that you wanted to see that you weren't able to look at, then that's something that you can definitely ask for in the feedback form, or just say, hey, I liked this stream, I did not like the stream, and so on and so forth. But we are approaching the top of the hour. So I will leave the last couple of minutes for any questions that anyone might have. But if you do not have any, then and thank you so much for joining me today, right? I know we had a few issues at the end, but I think overall this went really well. We started off with, no knowledge at all about any, cloud or Jenkins or any of that sort, anything like that. Then we created our cloud account. We created a VM. We spun that up. We had that set up for Jenkins. We installed Jenkins on it. We ran Jenkins. We connected Jenkins to our GitHub. and then we were able to get a end-to-end CI/CD pipeline going. So once again, thank you all so much for joining. I'll be around for another minute or so if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, hopefully I'll see you all at a future stream. All right. Bye, everyone. All right. Thank you, Tarun. Thank you, Ale. Thank you, Didianchi, especially for shouting out the forward slash. Thank you, Shredda. Thank you, Vineet. And thank you, everyone else.